To buy a house for my brother, I divorced my husband. I used half of the assets I received from the divorce along with all my savings to purchase my brother's current house. But I never imagined that after the divorce I would have nowhere to go. When I went to my brother for help, my sister-in-law shut the door in my face. She said that now that I'm divorced I bring bad luck, and since they are newlyweds I shouldn't disrupt their lives. I was furious. I tried to argue, saying that I divorced for my brother, that I bought that house to help him. But she responded that I am now just a burden, that my divorce was my own fault, and it had nothing to do with them, not even with my brother. She told me not to try and throw my burden onto their family. She said adults should take responsibility for their own marriages. It was my choice to sacrifice myself for my brother, my decision to give him money, and that was none of their concern. I was livid. What made me even angrier was that, while we argued at the door, my brother heard everything and stayed silent inside the house. My sister-in-law said he was the one who made the decisions in that household. If he wanted me to come in I would, if not, I would never set foot there again. And he? He didn't say a word. I felt utterly disappointed. My sister-in-law, so overbearing, barely married into the family and is already acting this way. And my brother? A spineless man, too cowardly to take a stand. He's completely unreliable. I've lost all hope in him. Now I have no money, no job, no home. I gave up my family and my own life for my brother, and this is the result. But perhaps I need to be honest with myself. Maybe I didn't divorce for my brother after all. Looking back, I think that was just an excuse I gave myself. Deep down, I wasn't satisfied with my marriage, and instead of addressing that, I acted impulsively. I used my brother as a justification for a decision that was really about my own unhappiness. Because I was so close to him, I never thought he would betray me like this. Now, I have to face the consequences of my impulsiveness and my refusal to take responsibility for my true feelings. I deserve all of this. I deeply regret everything.
离婚我已经经历了，现在很后悔。没离的时候呢，看老公啊是拿。
I've been through a divorce, and now I deeply regret it. Before we separated, everything about my husband annoyed me. He couldn't earn much money, didn't spend time with me, offered no emotional support, and was a mama's boy who never considered my feelings. When I shared my frustrations with others, I found that someone else seemed to understand me better than he did. Gradually, my heart drifted away. In the end, I pressured him to divorce me. He refused, and I begged him to let me go. I told him, "We had a child. I've gone through tough times with you, but I've done my part. Now, it's time for me to live for myself. If you agree, I won't ask for anything, absolutely nothing." I left with nothing. Even then, he humbly tried to win me back in various ways, but I told him, it's too late. Why didn't you try earlier? I already gave you all the chances. A few months later, seeing that I neither returned home nor cared for our child, he finally signed the papers. On the day he signed, he looked much thinner, but I left cold-heartedly without looking back. For a long time after that, he kept reaching out, sending me messages and calling me, but I ignored him. Eventually, he stopped trying. After the divorce, I moved to another city to find the man I thought I truly loved. But then I saw the true nature of people. The man I thought was my true love was afraid I'd be a burden, so he left without saying a word. Others who wanted to be with me wouldn't even spend money on me, they just made empty promises. In the end, I met my current husband and we remarried. He seemed like a good person, earning over 10,000 yuan a month and giving me 5,000. After a year of dating, we got married. But to my surprise, he changed after marriage. The 5,000 became 3,000 and eventually he stopped giving me even that, saying it was because I wasn't good to his child. The hardest moment was when I got sick and was hospitalized. The treatment cost over 20,000 yuan, and he refused to let me ask my family for help. That night, I woke up. My perspective shifted instantly. I thought of my ex-husband and my child. I called them, and it was my child who answered. The first thing he said was, "Mom, I miss you. Dad is really tired. He has to work and take care of me at the same time. Please come back." I couldn't say anything, I only felt guilt. I felt sorry for my child and my ex-husband. In the past, I always complained that he didn't earn enough, But now I realize that whatever he earned, he always spent on me and our child while sacrificing his own needs. He always wore the same few pieces of clothing. Sometimes he couldn't control his emotions, and I, in turn, would never back down. I used to think having children was something women did for their husbands, but now I know it's also something we do for ourselves. When my child said, "Come back, Mom," I realized how much I owed him. I deeply regret the divorce. This is the story of a female follower who shared her experience with me and gave me permission to publish it. She hopes her story can serve as a warning, especially for men and women in their first marriages who are thinking about separating or are in the cooling-off period. If your partner doesn't have major flaws, try not to divorce. Women who take care of their families, accompany and nurture their children, and build a solid life often find happiness. Don't always think, the grass is greener on the other side. Because when you get there, you'll realize the place you left was actually better. Do you understand?
My ex-husband and I have been divorced for 3 years, and now I finally regret it, but it's too late. Last month, I received a video call from my ex-husband. In the video, my son said to me, "Mom, I hate you. Why did you leave me? All the other kids have their mom and dad with them, but I don't." Hearing this, I broke down crying uncontrollably, shedding tears of regret. When my son was 2 years old, I decided to divorce my ex-husband. At the time, I gave up custody and started paying 1,800 yuan in child support every month. To be honest, the moment I finalized the paperwork, I felt free, as if I had been liberated. I thought I could finally live the life I wanted. 2 years after the divorce, I met a man 6 years older than me. I started a relationship with him, but he had no money and even hit me. Once, because I asked him for money and he refused to give it to me, he hit me so hard that I ended up in the hospital. At that moment, I felt utterly hopeless. I lost all faith in life and locked myself at home, refusing to see anyone. That's when I started thinking about my ex-husband. Although he didn't provide me with a luxurious life, he never let me go hungry. Although he wasn't romantic, he never laid a hand on me. But my ex-husband told me that, since we're already divorced, there's no point in getting back together. He knows I regret it, but he doesn't want to reconcile. Now, I finally understand where I went wrong. I shouldn't have been so competitive, so controlling. I shouldn't have demanded perfection in everything. I spent all my time trying to change others, without realizing the problem was with me. My son has been living with him since the divorce, and my ex-husband doesn't let me see him. I think about my son every night and cry until dawn, unable to sleep. Without him, I feel like a soulless body. Now, I'm completely clear-minded, and I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have been so controlling. What should I do? I got divorced and now I deeply regret it. Looking back, I see how blinded I was by my own frustrations, but the damage is done. My ex-husband refuses to reconcile, and I'm left facing the consequences of my choices, ones I can't undo. Let me be clear, divorce isn't just about two adults splitting up. It's a decision that echoes through every corner of your life, especially if you have children. Women, let me tell you something hard but true, over 90% of women who divorce end up regretting it. Society might romanticize independence, but the reality hits differently when you're on your own, realizing what you've lost. In my case, I thought my husband was the problem. I was controlling, critical, and convinced that he was holding me back from happiness. But the truth? I never stopped to reflect on my own flaws or the role I played in our issues. When I finally divorced, I thought I was breaking free to find happiness elsewhere. Instead, I found chaos. My daughter, once surrounded by love, sent me a video looking like a child lost in the world, unkempt, heartbroken, a shadow of her former self. It broke me. Divorce doesn't just hurt spouses, it leaves children emotionally stranded, searching for stability in a fractured home. And my second chance at love? A nightmare. I married an older man who drained me emotionally and financially, even resorting to violence when I stood up for myself. It's a hard pill to swallow, but the truth is, most second marriages fail. You can't expect another person to fix what's broken in you. If you leave one marriage believing the next will be better without addressing the real issues, you're setting yourself up for more pain. I know now that I should have fought harder for my first marriage. At least my daughter would still have a complete family, and my ex-husband was a good father who loved her unconditionally. My controlling nature drove us apart, and I see now how much of the problem started with me. So I'm asking you, before you consider divorce, think long and hard. Are you running from your problems, or are you willing to face them and grow? I've learned this the hard way, and I wouldn't wish this regret on anyone. But now I'm lost. Tell me, what would you do if you were in my shoes?
The new year is approaching, the time when families reunite, and yet I find myself alone. I left some of my belongings at a friend's house and found a temporary place to stay in an urban village. My daughter is with my ex-husband, so I don't have to take care of her for now. The truth is, I'm currently struggling to survive in a house I've rented for 31 days, with no heating, and I don't even know how I've been getting through these days. Especially last night, it was incredibly cold. When I woke up, my body and the electric blanket seemed to have been through a whole night of struggles, both of us utterly confused. I used to own a small dance studio, but now I've ended up in this situation. I can only say that maybe people shouldn't get into business so easily. Someone once said that the best way to ruin a woman is by having her marry impulsively. I want to say that you're right, but why did both the blows to my family and career come at the same time? Is this my fate? Now, I have nothing left. I can only see my daughter once a week, I live alone, and I comfort myself with the thought of being free. In the end, I still have to find a job because life goes on, but I really don't know what to do. I used to be a dancer. Later, I opened a dance studio, but it went bankrupt. In the end, dancing became a solo performance, and now I'm left with nothing.
95% of women who choose divorce regret it, and this is not an exaggeration. Because no one escapes a fundamental rule, unless the partner commits a serious mistake, whoever asks for divorce will inevitably regret it later. And the data shows that, in most cases, it is women who ask for divorce. But what happens to women who get divorced? Today I want to speak from the heart. If you can avoid divorce, avoid it. If you are going to divorce, think carefully about the future cost for your children. If you don't divorce, no matter how the man treats you, after all, he is the father of your child, and he will surely be dedicated to the child. If you really divorce, you will take care of the children, unless you can't leave them with the father, which can be very hard. If you have the means to take the children, the greatest burden will be yours. And you are still young, maybe you want to remarry. If you marry again and don't have children with the new partner, maybe you can still be happy. But if you already have a child and the other also has one, you will become the cheapest babysitter for the other. Remember, as long as you don't have financial independence and self-worth, no matter how many times you divorce, you will always be falling from one abyss into another. Each marriage and each child is another time you sacrificed yourself. Therefore, it might be better not to divorce. If you go around in circles, you will end up back at the starting point. Why go through that? If you divorce, it means no longer having a home. The man will still have a home after divorce, but what about the woman? The husband's family is not your family, and your parents' house is not home either. You will be despised everywhere, especially if you have children. When you go back to your parents' house, they will distance themselves from you. Because when you marry, you stop being the princess that your parents pampered and become an outsider in your in-laws' house. When you are not married, your family defends you when you argue with your husband, but when you divorce, who in your family will support you? Who will take responsibility for your child? They will think you embarrassed the family and that you are a financial burden to them. So, woman, if you can, avoid divorce. In marriage, focus on yourself, think about your interests. Otherwise, divorce could be a big disaster for you. Believe it or not.
Since 2012, the divorce rate in China, as well as worldwide, has been rising exponentially each year, with some cities reaching as high as 59%. This means that for every 10 couples who get married, nearly 6 end up getting divorced. So, what is behind this constant rise in divorce rates? The answer might lie in the 5 toxic phrases that have been shaping people's thinking. First phrase, marry an older man, he will treat you like a daughter. Many seek a rich and powerful man, but in reality, this is just an excuse for laziness and idleness. Only rich men can be called uncles. Without money, he is just a gentleman, and if you really find a man who treats you like a daughter, will you truly treat him like a father? Second phrase, Men who spend money on you don't necessarily love you, but those who don't spend money on you definitely don't love you. If a man's love depends on spending money, then you become just an object, a commodity. The relationship turns into a transaction, not genuine love. Men spend money for various reasons, not necessarily for love. It could be affection, physical desire, or even a need for conquest. Even if he spends money on you, what do you offer in return? Your beauty or a body devoid of thoughts? Third phrase, home is a place of love, not reason. This phrase is utterly absurd. Without reason, will you just get beaten for being unreasonable? Love requires commitment, of course, but this doesn't mean you can act irrationally. Love without logic doesn't exist. If someone lacks common sense, can we really speak of love? This phrase only makes sense when both people have empathy and mutual understanding. Fourth phrase, marriage needs ceremonies. Just because a man gives you a gift on Valentine's Day doesn't mean he loves you. Marriage should be about mutual understanding and support, not about performing with gifts. The ceremonies and charms promoted by the media and marketers have a hidden agenda, and they end up creating false expectations in women. Some live in a dream, believing these toxic phrases and advice, which ultimately become harmful. Fifth phrase, as long as women keep having children, men and women will never be equal. This is just one of many toxic phrases circulating. As long as men continue acting as if they have no responsibilities, as long as the battleground remains dominated by them, as long as women are seen as privileged, gender equality will remain a distant dream. Equality doesn't mean equal treatment, but rather equal rights and duties in all areas: culture, politics, social status, family, and economy. Men need to understand that having children is not a woman's obligation, but her right. A woman carries a child for 9 months, goes through immense pain during childbirth and postpartum. She deserves to be loved and understood, not criticized just for giving birth. And women also need to understand that motherhood is not only to please men, but also for themselves. We can't ignore these toxic phrases. They have destroyed many families, especially those with children. About 90% of juvenile crimes come from divorced homes. We need to wake up, reflect, and change how we view relationships and family. Building a home is not easy. We must be understanding and value what truly matters, living together. For the sake of the children and the parents, if a marriage can't continue, may the suffering be minimized as much as possible. What's your opinion on this? If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. See you in the next video.